Coming up on UGTV, Board of Commission meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas.
The public hearing agenda regarding the proposed 2019 Unified Government Budget and the 2018 Community Development One-Year Action Plan may sign up at either of the tables located at the chamber doors. If you have not yet signed up on your way in and wish to address the commission on that item, please go to one of those tables and sign up. When that item is up for discussion, the clerk will call the names in order according to the sign-up sheets. She will also announce who's on deck, which means you'll be next to the podium. And when you come to the podium, located by the railing up front, please state your name and city of residency for the record. You will be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments. The clerk will announce when you have 1 minute remaining to allow you time to conclude your comments. We'll now call this meeting to order. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Roll call. Townsend.
Here.
McKiernan.
Here.
Mugia.
Here.
Johnson.
Here.
Kane.
Here.
Markley. Here. Walters.
Here.
Philbrook.
I'm sorry, I jumped the gun. Here.
Bynum.
Here.
Burrows.
Here.
Alvey.
Here. This evening, the invocation is being given by Reverend Brian Mann of Bethel Seventh-day Adventist Church. And after the conclusion, please remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let us bow. Lord, we thank you so much for this opportunity to take part in our government. We ask that you would lead us and guide us this evening, give us clear minds, help us not to have made up our mind in advance. We ask that you would lead us and guide us so that the citizens of our community will be well represented. Bless us now. Save us. I ask in Jesus' name, amen.
I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Reverend Mann. Are there any revisions to tonight's agenda?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, a blue sheet has been distributed. We have 2 new items under the administrator's agenda. Item number 1 is a resolution regarding the MOU for the United Brotherhood of Carpenters, and then item number 2 is a resolution regarding the MOU for the FOP Lodge number 4.
Thank you. So tonight we have 2 distinct parts to our meeting. The planning and zoning portion will be handled first, followed by the regular commission meeting. I'll ask the clerk to read the statement required by state law governing the planning and zoning portion of our meeting, followed by the items on the planning and zoning consent agenda.
We would like to welcome all present to the meeting of the Unified Government Commission. Members of the commission are Mayor David Alvey, Commissioner Melissa Bynum at Large District 1, Commissioner Tom Burrows at Large District 2, Commissioner Gail Townsend, District 1, Commissioner Brian McKiernan, District 2, Commissioner Ann Mugia, District 3, Commissioner Harold Johnson Jr., District 4, Commissioner Mike Kane, District 5, Commissioner Angela Markley, District 6, Commissioner Jim Walters, District 7, and Commissioner Jane Philbrook, District 8. As each petition is called this evening, all persons for or against will be given the opportunity to express their views. If this is the first time that a particular petition has been before this commission, the commission has 3 options. Number 1, it can approve the recommendation of the Planning Commission with 6 votes. Number 2, it can override the Planning Commission's recommendation, but it would take 8 votes to override. And number 3, it can return the matter of the Planning Commission for further recommendation, together with the statement specifying the reason for the referral back to the Planning Commission. The consent agenda is the first part of the planning and zoning consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda have received a unanimous vote of recommendation by the Planning Commission. Unless there is a request to set aside an item from the consent agenda by the applicant, a member of the public, the Unified Government Commission, or staff, then the Planning Commission's recommendation on all items on the consent agenda will be adopted by the Unified Government Commission at one time. I will read the list of the agenda items on the consent agenda, and when I have completed the list, the mayor will ask if there are requests to set aside items for the consent agenda. This is your time to stand up and request that an item be set aside if you do not agree with the Planning Commission's recommendation. If an item is set aside, the matter will be discussed and voted upon separately. All items not set aside will be approved with the Planning Commission's recommendation. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of each petition. We would remind you that there are a number of items on the agenda, and we would appreciate your efforts to make your remarks as concise as possible. We ask that anyone with a cell phone to please turn them off or switch to non-audio so you will not disturb the meeting. Once the petitioners make their presentation, anyone for or against will be allowed the maximum 3 minutes to state your views. As you come to the microphone, please state your name and city for the record. The mayor and commission are required to disclose contacts with proponents or opponents on any item on the planning and zoning agenda. I will ask if any members of the commission wish to disclose any contact with proponents or opponents on any item on the agenda.
Yes. Commissioner Bynum?
I've had contact with proponents of change of zone, item 1, number 3151. I have had contacts with opponents of special use permit 2017-55. Thank you.
Commissioner Philbrook?
I've had contact on item number 3151 and SP 2017-74.
Commissioner Walters?
I've had contact on item A1, number 3151.
Commissioner Kane?
Same contact, petition number 3151.
Commissioner Townsend?
Thank you, Mayor. I've had contact with proponents of change of zone application number 3151 and also with proponents of the miscellaneous ordinance amendment concerning the mobile markets.
Thank you. Commissioner Johnson?
Thank you, Mayor. Proponents of A1, number 3151, and opponents of SP 2017-55. Thank you.
Commissioner Markley?
I've also had contacts on item 3151A1.
Commissioner Burrows?
Thank you, Mayor. I've had contact with proponents of 3151, item number 1.
Commissioner McKiernan?
Thank you. I've had contact with proponents of A1, number 3151.
Thank you. Commissioner McGeeh?
Contact with proponents for 3151.
And I also have had contact with proponents of 3151.
I will now read the items on consent agenda. Change of zone application, item number 1, 3151 Tyler Edwards with Menard Inc. Change of zone from AG Agricultural District to CP2 Planned General Business District for a Menard's Home Improvement Retail Store at 1301 North 98th Street, recommended for approval. Item 2, 3153 Don Gray with Board of Public Utilities. Change of zone from AG Agricultural to R1 Single Family District to M3 Heavy Industrial Districts for an existing power plant at 4240 and 4240R North 55th Street and 4400 and 4800 North 47th Street, recommended for approval. Special use permit applications, item 1, SP 2017-55, Veronica Wesselhoff, Special use permit for a party hall at 2120 Park Drive, recommended for denial. Item 2, SP 2017-72, Diego Tutu with XM Automotive, renewal of a special use permit for an automotive repair shop at 4439 Shawnee Drive, recommended for denial. Item 3, SP 2017-74, Will Anderson with BHC, Roads with Winifred Anderson, renewal of a special use permit for recycling for pavement truck weigh scale and fill site at 626 North 47th Street, recommended for approval for 6 months. Item 4, SP 2018-6, Blair A. Thedinger, special use permit for 2 goats at 411 Stein Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 5, SP 2018-13, Lee Reichert with UHL Engineering, special use permit for a lot to be used as overflow storage and staging area for a used car lot at 1401 State Avenue, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 6, SP 2018-14, Corey R. Fisher, home occupational special use permit for an Airbnb at 4451 Eaton Street, recommended for approval for 2 years. Item 7, SP 2018, Adrian Bortz with Gabriel Rentals LLC, special use permit for a short-term Airbnb at 1101, 1103, 1107, and 1109 North 79th Terrace, recommended for approval for 2 years. Vacation application, 1 item, 1U, is WE 2018-1, Earl Freeman, vacation of utility easement at 12940 and 12934 Hubbard Road, recommended for approval. Plan review application, item 1, PR 2017-36, Kevin Quinn, preliminary and final plan review for expansion of Legends Honda parking on Lot 2 and 4 for private car wash detailing facility to be used for car dealership at 2200 North 99th Street and 10010 Lafayette Avenue, recommended for approval. E, miscellaneous ordinance amendment is an ordinance amendment removing the special use permit requirement for mobile grocery markets and new definition for mobile market, recommended for approval. Those are all items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Does any member of the commission or anyone in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on the planning and zoning consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the planning and zoning consent agenda will be voted on by 1 vote to follow the recommendation of the Planning Commission.
Tyler Edwards, I'm the applicant for item A1, 3151. We request that this is removed from the consent agenda so we can discuss.
Thank you. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to have a fuller discussion, and therefore I'm asking it be set aside the proposed ordinance regarding the mobile grocery operators.
The number of that is? E1. Okay. Yes.
For XM Automotive, we wanted to ask that you please remove from consent agenda to be discussed.
I'm sorry, which?
That's B2.
B2?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Move for approval for all remaining items.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call, Townsend.
Aye.
Kiernan.
Aye.
Mugia. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. First of all, I failed to recognize Chuck Stites in the audience, elected official for Edwardsville City Council. We always have to lead with that. That takes us to the set-aside item, change of zone petition number 3151, Tyler Edwards with Menard Incorporated to rezone property at 1301 North 98th Street. I'll ask staff to make some opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This comes before the Board of Commissioners tonight, recommended for approval with several stipulations from the Planning Commission. I believe Mr. Edwards has a few points related to those stipulations he'd like to discuss, so I'd turn it over to him at this point.
Good evening, Tyler Edwards, real estate representative with Menards. We are excited to be here tonight. We're working on our 5th Kansas City regional store. We've been looking in this area for quite a long time. We're excited to found our spot, get constructed later this spring, and open about a year later from that. We are handing out some materials related to our project so you can follow along as we discuss some of these items. And as such, handing them out, add them to the official record. We are, I'll wait till I'll hand it out. The first group in that packet is a set of Menards site plans. The first 3 pages are the most updated plans that we have submitted. And the last 2 pages were the first set that we submitted. Based on the 2, you can see we've come a long way from the prototypical store that was the second 2 pages. That's the store, same as built in the Kansas City, Missouri market. Very good store for us. But we have, over the process of this review, made a lot of changes, compromises, concessions to get to the store that you see on your pages. Those include parapet on the front of the building, sienna columns on the front of the building, a sienna knee wall on the front of the building, additional windows that no other Menards store has yet, columns on the north side of the building, a lot of additional landscaping, and after the Planning Commission meeting, we added columns to the back of the warehouse facing east, as well as the fence, and changed the color of that warehouse to tan. All of this was done in an attempt to get everybody comfortable with how our store operates in relationship to the ordinance. Now, I hope Rob doesn't think I'm picking on him. But he is a great example because he's told me several times he has visited the St. Joe, Missouri Menards store frequently. And so do thousands of others Wyandotte County residents. That's a large outflow of retail shoppers to other Menards stores. So this will help bring all those thousands of people back to the county, sharing trips, spending their sales dollars here. Now, all that being said, there are a few outstanding issues that we want to talk about. And those are the items in the packet that are under the red lettering on the last few issues that we need to discuss. Tonight we are asking for not a recommendation that aligns with the Planning Commission, but in fact a recommendation that approves of the plans we have submitted 100%. So we have a clear direction going into building plans and the final development plan process. With that, the first issue is the wood screening around our lumberyard. This is a feature that every single Menards store has. It will be a treated wood fence. We have agreed to a maintenance program that will keep this updated and looking fresh. There's probably millions of square feet of board fence around the area that look nice. We're going to continue doing that on our store, so we're asking that wood screening is approved. There is a truck trailer that is stored in our yard that we are asking is approved. It is not a over-the-road truck. There's a picture of it in the back of that packet. You'll see on the second couple of pages. Not a full-length semi-trailer. We're asking that is allowed to be stored within the enclosed yard, not visible to the public. Parking is a BZA issue we've submitted for, but I do have some figures in that packet related to parking spaces at stores in the area and other new Menards stores. Some of them have 100 left spaces, and we operate very well. We are comfortable with our own parking situation, and we're going to the BZA for that item, so we're asking that you accept our parking as it stands. Cart corrals is one of the photos that I took a picture of because I was told that everyone else has complied with this ordinance section. There is a picture of the Target, of the Nebraska Furniture Mart, of the Cabela's, all with cart corrals, almost identical to what we're proposing, minus the cover. We won't put signage on it, but we are asking you to approve our cart corrals because we move them around seasonally, closer to the garden center during the spring and summer, and then closer to the front doors during the winter, depending on the busy season. So those cannot be permanent structures in our parking lot. Asking you to approve those as proposed. There's a request for a sidewalk connecting 98th Street to our store. That was made on the south side. That is apparent on the plan. However, we were asked to add another sidewalk through the parking lot. Those sidewalks don't get used very often unless you are parked right next to them. Nobody walks through a bunch of cars to get to a sidewalk and then up towards the door out of the way. Same with coming out of the store. Nobody pushes their cart down this sidewalk, over the curb, through the cars to get to your vehicle. I had attached some pictures of examples. You'll see the rows in the middles. They don't benefit. This isn't something we need. Our aisles are 26 feet wide, plenty of room for pedestrian and vehicle traffic without any sort of conflict. We have covered noise issues with the neighbors. There's no need for any sort of sound study. Our forklifts do not have backup beepers on them at the new stores. That is not an OSHA requirement for our forklifts, so there's no sound issue. Cleared that with the neighbors. We're asking that you approve that without the need for a sound study. And then almost to the end, the columns on the north side of the building, the ordinance says they need to be 45 feet apart. That is a long, expansive wall. We added them at where the roof changes pitch. There's a few of them on that facade. The neighbors are in agreement. We think it looks nice, so we're asking you to approve that facade as presented. Landscaping, I think we are 100% covered. There is additional landscaping added to the neighboring property. We have an agreement with them, so we're asking you to combine those additional trees on their property. We've already filled out all the landscaping on our property, and it's full. It looks nice. I think we're there on that issue. Rooftop mechanical screening. We are screening the rooftop mechanical units almost identically to the DFA building, our neighbor. They are all individually screened. You cannot see them from any side. So from their property, it will be perfectly screened. And there's a parapet on the front wall already, so that'll just aid in that screening. Those are the issues that we are asking you to approve based on how we presented them, how the plans show them, so we get 100% guidance moving forward. The end of the Planning Commission was rather confusing. There was no clear consensus on where we were going. We are asking that the plans we have submitted are approved so we can go get our final development plan and start construction.
Thank you. I'll now open the public hearing and ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak in favor of 3151. If so, please step to the podium at this time and give us your name and address for the record. You'll be given up to 3 minutes to state your comments.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Kurt Peterson here on behalf of the master developer. Just wanted to address a couple items. Mr. Richardson is passing out a couple sheets of paper, and before you get overly frustrated, I will say I hope commissioners understand this is something that we don't, I'm a repeat player here, and we don't usually pass things out like this. But the reason is, as Mr. Edwards said, coming out of Planning Commission, I do this for a living, and I don't know what got approved, honest to goodness. And so what we did is we took the exact numbering from the staff packet, and so you can follow along. And as Mr. Edwards did, he marched through and put comments next to each item in the staff packet that needs to be addressed to show why we would ask you to support the plans as submitted. And so we hope that's the easiest way for you to understand, to ask questions, to take notes, and we'd ask at the end that the motion that would be made, if there's the votes in favor of this proposal, and we hope there is, that the motion would be the plans as submitted, and that would be in the record that Mr. Edwards gave you, and then this packet I'm giving you right now would also be in the record. We hope that is the best way to bring clarity to what is being voted on. So with that, the only items I'm bringing up are those that are on behalf of the master developer that really have nothing to do with Menards. Marching through that, comment B13, which is on the first page in front of you, is a comment where staff asked for an updated traffic study. I'd call it an updated global traffic study. And what we would point out to commissioners is we did do with Menards an updated traffic study that specifically looked at the Menards situation. And staff has had that and reviewed that. And so what we would ask, instead of having this B13 read that an updated global traffic study needs to be done in addition to the study we just did, and this would be a condition for construction permit, which, as Mr. Edwards said, he wants to get get to work here in the next 6 to 8 weeks after final plans approved. So we'd ask that you change this and say when the rest of the development moves forward south of Menards, we would do a global traffic study. Then we know everything that's going in, and it would make more sense and be efficient. So that's the change we'd ask for there. Comment B14 is exactly the same. It's just talking about what would be in that traffic study. We agree to that. We'd just like to do it again with the rest of the master development south of Menards, not hold Menards up for yet another traffic study.
You have 1 minute, sir.
Thank you. Comment B15 on the second page is just saying that 98th and State would get a signal. As many of you may remember, as part of the development agreement, that money's already been set aside from the bond issuance, and the UG is, whenever they want to move forward with that signal, the UG will do it, and we're supportive of that. So we would just ask that not have any tie to Menards in any way. The last one is B16, and that's a traffic improvements at 98th and Parallel. This is something that will be, the design has already been approved by the UG, which is great. This is something that Soccer, the master developer, and the UG will coordinate with and pay for and get done. Right now, it's a condition of TCO for Menards. We would ask that you decouple Menards from that because as the updated traffic study said that was just done, Menards has no impact on that intersection. Let's get this done and tie it to the development as it moves forward south of Menards. And really with that, again, we'd ask that you incorporate this into hopefully a motion in favor of this project tonight to bring clarity to these points as we move out of this meeting. On behalf of the master developer, thank you for all the support that you've given this development. And the master developer, we are thrilled that we have one of the nation's leading retailers, really the most sought after in the country, that is poised to come to the UG. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Right. Is there anyone else in favor of this who would like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Eric Gentry, and I have Victory Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, Victory Ford, and Premier Auto Outlet at the Legends. And first of all, I'd just like to apologize that you have a car dealer following an attorney. I know that's maybe not the best thing, but for your night. But I'm here in support of this project, and I'm not just here on behalf of myself, but the roughly 150 employees that, with your vision and the Commission's vision, that we have brought to the Legends Auto Plaza. And I've taken some informal and surveys of those people, and to every single person has been incredibly in favor of the Menards coming and being our neighbor. And you know, I've stood up here a few different times when we were in the process of building these dealerships out there, and invested millions of dollars in this area. And I can tell you, I'm extremely excited for what that can bring and what can follow along behind that. And you know, my ultimate goal is to be standing up here in front of you within the next 12 months and be asking to build another car dealership in this exact same area. So I think you guys have demonstrated incredible foresight, and it's benefited us. And I think that this partnership and the synergy that Menards would bring would be a big benefit.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? Okay. Seeing none, if there is anyone in opposition who would like to speak on this item, please come forward. Seeing none. There are no further comments or questions from the public. I'll close the public hearing. Would the petitioner like to make any closing comments? Thank you. Any members of the commission have any questions or comments? Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Anybody who watches any commission meetings on television knows I don't like stuff at the last minute. I don't like stuff 10 minutes before the meeting. I like stuff with enough time that I can actually look at it and make an informed decision, because that's what I've been asked to do. And what I look at right here, and I'm not going to make any comment about the project. Project's great. I'm going to make a comment about process. Because I'm looking here at what date, Mr. Richardson, was this brought forward to the Planning Commission? February 12th?
Correct.
Okay, on the February 12th report that's in my agenda packet, and I'll just go with General Planning Item Number 1, Section 27-466C1. That comment is the same, but the applicant response that was in my agenda packet differs from the applicant response that's in this handout, let alone what's in red here. So what's in red isn't an addition. The whole thing, it's a substantive rewriting of what I had in my agenda packet. And I don't know that we should, I will just say, I depend on the Planning Commission, my representative to the Planning Commission, to make an informed decision about what they are presented with. It appears that what we are being presented with differs substantially from what the Planning Commission was presented with. And if that's the case, that bothers me. It bothers me that a wholesale revision is potentially being given to us without enough time for us to go, what about this? Because there are, what, about 32 items on this list? There's a number of items on this list. So I'm just frustrated with the process that we are undergoing here tonight because I don't feel like I'm being given time to make a thoughtful decision about what appear to be some substantial changes. And that's all I have to say. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Bynum.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to, for the public that's here and for myself, talk about the process a little bit. So tonight is a rezoning of the area for the project. And if that's approved, will there later be a development agreement for this project? That would be a separate item.
Yeah, we're currently working on, and the development agreement we're working on for this project is not one we're doing directly with Menards. Development agreement is one we do directly with Schlitterbahn and EPR through the master developers for the overall project area, and they're approved. So we are still in the process of working on that, and that would be a separate agreement that would come before you at a later date.
And this is just a part of that bigger project. This is specifically about rezoning this property for a Menards.
Strictly the planning and zoning item.
But
it has nothing to do with the business deal, with the exception of there's some notations made on this one sheet that came out about the intersection improvement.
Right.
And that's where Mr. Peterson had noted that he thought that should be separated from this deal. I don't know that.
Well, that's what I want to clarify, because we're being asked, again, I think kind of with what Commissioner McKiernan is saying, we were brought forward what was agreed to at the planning and zoning level. That's what's in our packet. But we can modify or change that tonight with a vote on this change of zone, because he's correct that what's been given to us is different in parts than what we've been given in our agenda packet that was passed and approved by our planning board. Okay.
I haven't had time to read through everything in detail, but that's what it looks like.
Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you. I'm just going to echo what Commissioner McKiernan has already said. I know that we take a lot of pride up here in doing the best we can to represent our constituents, and it is disheartening to me to spend the time to go through these presentations and then at the 11th hour being asked to consider something else. I don't think I can adequately do that tonight. I would like to see this delayed or sent back just to consider what we've just been given. I don't think I do justice to my constituents, because I'm not quite sure what I'm being asked to look at this late hour.
Mr. Moore.
Yes, Mayor and Commissioners, the changes are significantly different than those that were advanced by the Planning Commission, and they are beyond what would be considered during a final plat review or some other action of the Commission. So I just wanted to advise that it would take 8 votes to approve the proposal that the applicant has advanced.
Okay. Is it possible to have him? That'll come up. I don't think so. Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So now that I have expressed my dissatisfaction and displeasure with this, my bigger question is, how much of this is actually germane to the change of zone application that is the real business that's brought before us tonight. This seems like a lot of stuff that would be in a development agreement, in a final plan review, not in a change of zone. So how much of this is actually, should have been actually handed at this time to the Planning Commission? How much it should have been handed to me to make me get all focused on this? Because as I sit and think about things like fences and cart corrals, I ask myself, is that actually germane to changing the zone? Because isn't that what is before us?
Commissioner, it's also the preliminary development plan. And so when we are presented with a preliminary development plan, we do a code review on that. And the comments that we generated were based on the review of the code. And the applicant at this time wants more certainty than just working it out at Planning Commission in the final plan review. Is that fair, Tyler?
That is. I can comment on that.
Please go ahead.
Yes, at the Planning Commission meeting, there was the staff report, which listed every deviation from code that we had. Standard practice. We talked for about an hour and a half about all sorts of issues, got to one issue at the end, which was a change to the back of the warehouse and fence. Columns on the back of the warehouse and fence facing the trail. Great. We're done. We covered all the issues. The motion that was approved recommended every single one of those conditions in the staff report. So all of a sudden we go back from one issue that we agreed to 30. So there are issues that we needed to talk about because we can't just agree to what was swept in front of us after we talked for that long and came up with one issue which we agreed to.
Well, I would say that there was an agreement. They expressed their opinion as to those parts of the staff report and those comments, and the Planning Commission chose to adopt them despite what had been testified to by the applicant at the meeting.
So, if I could clarify this. So, Tyler, what I think you're saying is that your understanding was the Planning and Zoning Commission approved what was presented with one outstanding issue. That's your understanding?
No. The other items that we asked them to approve weren't discussed. What came down to the final issue that made them all seem to be comfortable with our project was the exterior elevations, which then came down to the elevation facing the public walking trail behind. I had asked them to approve based on that condition, and I thought that was, but one commissioner made a motion to approve everything, and that's why you got a packet of stuff, because Menards frankly isn't going to agree to those 30 conditions. So we have to talk about that. You guys are the governing body. That's why we bring it to you. And we are out of time because we submitted this in September and our Planning Commission meeting was 2 weeks ago.
Thank you. Commissioner Kane?
How many stores have you built prior to trying to build this one?
306 plus the ones we've remodeled, so
All right.
probably close to 400.
All right, so 400 of them are all the same,
Yes.
or close to.
All the last ones in the last 20
So
years
there
are the
wasn't
same.
a bunch of add-ons when you went to those other municipalities to get this done until you got here.
Certain cities have different nuances that we tend to agree to, like the front of the building, which we have agreed to. The columns in the back, which are agreed to, landscaping. They're not all identical. There's changes, which we're agreeable to.
And a question for Slitterbomb, have you guys reached out to staff or no, to talk about this stuff?
Even during this week, and I wish Mr. McKiernan wasn't disappointed because we try so hard to be clear in this whole effort. Literally, all of it was going point by point in the staff report, making it red. It was all intended to make the commission's job easier to analyze everything that's gone on, as Tyler said, and including, to get to your point, this week working with staff trying to compromise and figure out certain points. And we had a back and forth with Mr. Richardson on, help me, today's Thursday, Tuesday, I think, and that's what led to this very last draft with the red comments. And we thought, and this isn't a pointing a finger, maybe we should have communicated better with Mr. Richardson, but Mr. McKiernan, Dr. McKiernan, the red is on top of the black because we thought that was going into the staff. We thought that was going to be distributed with the staff packet, the underlying, and we thought we were helping by putting the red in, so you'd only have to look at those changes. So it's earnestness 100% to try to make everything super clear, and much of what's repeated in Tyler's packet that he handed out is simply getting everything down in order, even though most of it's okay. We even have agreement with staff. It was trying to make sure that it was the whole and you weren't looking at, bits and pieces. So I fear this is largely perhaps a misunderstanding, but ending, Commissioner Kane, we worked even through this week with Mr. Richardson in his office. I mean, we're constantly trying to refine and get the final product.
Are we trying to vote on passing this, one, and then two, having them get together to resolve their issues? Is that what we're doing?
No, I believe they are asking to incorporate all the changes they're bringing forward tonight as part of what they're seeking to be approved.
And this goes back into, I don't know if either side's done a good enough job to communicate to each other what's required and what's not required. And then some of the other stuff that we went out there, staff said this, and we were given the opportunity to say, no, we'll go ahead and Frontier Justice is an example I'm talking about. Staff said they wanted this, and we came up with a solution to that. And I guess part of my confusion is I think you're right, Commissioner McKiernan, that a lot of this should have been worked out to get in here. But the question is, who's at fault for us not knowing what we're supposed to be voting on?
Well, Commissioner, let me maybe step back to the Planning Commission meeting and how we got to this point. So Tyler's right. They went through and they asked for several deviations, whatever that number was, from the Planning Commission. And the Planning Commission, with the exception of the items, there was confusion related to what the development agreement said for stoplights, and the motion allowed me to correct that based on what was in the development agreements, which I did before it came to you. They voted to uphold the overlay zone and the requirements of the overlay zone. We've been working through this for a long time with the overlay zone, and basically every time we've said this is what our code requires, we've been told no, which is fine. It happens. After Planning Commission, Tyler sent me a letter, and the hard copy of that data got lost in the mail through no fault of his, but we went through that. Kurt and I worked to figure out, I got a digital copy on Tuesday. I read it on Tuesday. That's generally what you have here that was presented to you on Tuesday, and I sent it back with my comments to Kurt, and they took my comments and their comments and incorporated them here. And I believe in red is where they feel like that we still have a disparity between staff and Menards. So we've agreed to on a resolution for many of the items that Planning Commission said to resolve. So after the Planning Commission said, no, we want you to uphold that, well, they went through this whole list with me, and we came up with resolutions to almost everything. There, in the items that they have in red and the items that are in yellow that Mr. Peterson handed out are the remaining items where staff and the developer are, either the developer or the applicant, are not in agreement. And so those items, if you want to approve this tonight with the way that they've requested, it would be to have a motion that would approve the change of zone subject to the two items that were handed out this evening, one from Mr. Edwards, one from Mr. Peterson, and then we would follow that through the final plan and move forward with the final plan that way. If there are
we close enough to make a decision or no?
There are probably two things that I am not sure about at this point in time. From the front of our retail stores, when you're standing in the street or looking in the street, anything that's been built since the overlay zone, you can't see the rooftop units because of the screening of the front parapet. I understand that from the sides that may be different. I don't know that from the street you can't say it. I don't know if it's you'll see half of it or 6 inches of it. I mean, 6 inches of it, you can't tell. We don't even really deal with that. But I don't know where that line is. I would like to know where that line is and make sure that they, from the front view, do what everyone else has done. And related to the traffic, their engineers used general traffic numbers for what they did on the traffic study. Menards has since provided us 500 pages of data related to their stores that we got on Friday. Is that correct? and it's not incorporated into their traffic study. We're asking that that data be incorporated into the traffic study at this time, so we know for sure if we need to do any improvements before they open to make sure the streets are safe. So I think that those two items, and I think we can do that. I think that their numbers are going to make the traffic situation appear better, so that the delays that they're asking for are reasonable. But I'm not the one that analyzes that, and I can't do it from Friday to Monday.
Let me ask a different question. Can we get there from here? I move for approval of this project.
Second.
Do we have, okay, so I just go ahead and go to a vote? We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Commissioner Walters?
Well, I was going to ask Rob kind of the same question that Mike did, which was, have you had a chance to even look at the recommended modifications to know whether your staff could stand behind them and recommend them to us for approval? But maybe since you've kind of told us the two elements that come to your mind immediately, I might change what I ask and ask for a clarification of just what the motion was. Is the motion to approve what's on our agenda and adopt the recommendations of the Planning Commission, or to adopt the Planning Commission recommendations incorporating all the comments in these handouts that we received a few minutes ago?
Planning and zoning on all the documentation that turned into us, because Rob said he's only got a couple that he's worried about, and I don't want to stop a project on just a couple of items.
So I guess we're kind of in a bind here, Rob. I mean, we're really relying on you having digested these comments thoroughly, and
So if I understood Commissioner Kane correctly, it would be adopting, the motion would be to approve the project as submitted by the as submitted and amended by the applicant's statements tonight, and we will look at the front elevation to make sure that it's screened from the front on the rooftop units, and that we would get the traffic study revised, and those things would happen before final plan review is completed. They're in that process right now, just to make sure that there's nothing that we have to do immediately for Menards to make sure that the traffic safety issue is resolved when Menards opens.
And that's exactly what I'm saying.
Okay.
Commissioner McKiernan?
And it is useful that they give us all this information ahead of time, because I just went back and I read from the Planning Commission recommendation. It was the Planning Commission voted 8-0 to recommend approval of the change of zone, stipulating that the staff and applicant continue to work towards compromise on the issues in the staff report for final plan review. So basically, if we, as I see it, if we approve this, we are telling staff and the applicant to do exactly what Commissioner Kane said, keep working, because we still have final plan review. This has not gone through a final review and final approval, and that, if I'm not mistaken, would be our opportunity to still address any issues that have not been resolved.
Commissioner, I really don't want to stand up, because everything, this is the right move. It's as submitted. The motion on the table would be as submitted by Menards, with two exceptions, both of which I was just talking to Tyler. We can work with. This is a perfect solution, but I'd be remiss if I didn't say this doesn't come back to you at final. And I would say a big corporation like Menards does take comfort with having certain details that really, if you're not hearing it, really matter to the company to be finally up or down by this body. So by airing it at this level, issues that were in the staff report, Dr. McKiernan, these aren't things that were just brought up. The comments are made by staff in the staff report. We respond in a specific way so that you all can hear it. This is your only shot to hear it. And so we appreciate this motion, because it will do exactly what we'd ask, and we'll have two more issues to compromise on.
I go back to the original requested action. The applicant, Tyler Edwards with Menards, Inc., seeks a change of zone from AG Agricultural District to CP2 Plan General Business District.
And a PD, and a preliminary development plan. That's where all the detail comes in.
Where in this requested action does it say preliminary development plan?
No.
Commissioner, on a change of zone, it's incorporated in a planned district. It's part of the planned district.
Part of the CP2 Planned General Business District.
Correct.
Which is why Planning Commission should make these.
And final plan won't come back to you. I'm sorry if I didn't make that point. This is it.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Regia?
Thanks. Mr. Peterson, is what you're trying to tell us that there was not an opportunity to discuss the discrepancies between what Menards wanted and what our staff wanted at any point in our process?
This is the one shot we have for you and the other commissioners to hear it, which is why, again, I know it's painful. We tried to identify those details once and for all for you to give an up or down, which the motion on the table would move those forward subject to 2 points that we're good with. So at this point, we're very content with the motion.
How many votes will this take? It will take 8. So we have a motion and a second. Any further comments? Commissioner McKiernan?
I'm just going to say that I don't like the fact that we have unresolved issues that will never come back before this commission.
Commissioner, that's quite frankly regularly what we do,
Okay.
and we always get them worked out when they go to
Commissioner
final
Kane
plan.
asked, are you confident you can work these out to
Yes.
the satisfaction of both parties?
Yes.
I'm done.
Commissioner Regia?
And I just add that this is the first time in over a decade that I've been on the commission that I've ever seen this happen. So we are setting a precedent for future developers to come in front of us. And I agree, Mr. Peterson, that, and for your name, I'm sorry, sir, from Menards, that there needs to be a step in the process that if there is a discrepancy between what staff is recommending and the developer is recommending, that there is an opportunity to be heard either by our Planning and Zoning Commission or by the commission itself. I don't know how that happens, whether that's through executive session or some sort of process, because it doesn't seem like there's as much I have very little objection to the requested changes. I have some concerns. I won't, there are other places where there are block cart corrals that are required. Much less lucrative businesses than Menards are made to have that requirement. But I have a little concern about that, more about setting precedent about our process. So I appreciate you bringing that we have this problem in our system, but I do think we need to address it before it continues to happen again.
Commissioner, just to clarify, these items were all presented at Planning Commission. I think what the issue is, the Planning Commission did not incorporate any of what they recommended or what they asked them to do at Planning Commission. So they just forwarded what planning staff did because Planning Commission did not incorporate any of these. They didn't, so that it was heard, public hearing was done on it, and they addressed a couple of issues. As Mr. Tyler said, we went through, they spent most of their time on a couple of the issues, didn't work many of the other ones that they brought up. So it did have its chance to go through the process.
So if they didn't agree on the details of the deal, then why was there a vote on it?
I mean, Planning Commission can elect to advance a project however they deem to
But if there's
put
not-
in place all the overlay zone
But
requirements.
if the people are not, if the developer is not agreeing to the conditions, what project are they advancing?
Well, Commissioner, I would say that 95% of the time, when we have stipulations and folks disagree with it, when the Planning Commission recommends approval, they just go ahead and do the stipulations. It's not, the only two I can recall are the building materials on Frontier Justice and this one, where we had such a significant disagreement related to what the overlay zone required. And we discussed this at length, and there was no compromise. It was either yes or no. And even other alternatives that were offered, you know, it's been a very unusual process on our side.
Well, I'd just close with, if Commissioner Kane, as the in-district commissioner, does not have concerns with the recommended changes, I would support that decision. However, I'll just remind everyone again, we are setting precedent, and we will see this again if we don't develop some sort of process.
I think the other way that that could play out is it may be an exception, a precedent, could also be simply an anomaly, and we simply treat it as an anomaly. Commissioner Philbrook.
Well, so I was present for the whole planning and zoning, and it was very enlightening, and I did learn a lot, and I'm glad I was there. That's why I haven't been asking questions. I've been listening. And I believe that the intent of Planning and Zoning Commission was to move things forward so this group could have their development, and wholeheartedly believed that all the problems would be worked out and they would be able to move forward. And I believe that's what Planning and Zoning thought. Past that, I have no comment because I'm not involved in their, in their conversations as what they've agreed to. I didn't hear a lot of pushback about a lot of the things that Menards was asking for from the commission. Okay. And I don't think they wanted to stipulate anything because they believed it would be worked out between both sides and move forward. So, but I do want to thank the group for coming forward to present to us, because it gives us a good feeling, even though it's a precedent that we've created, it lets us know that maybe we need to change things a little bit, as Commissioner says, to make things work a little smoother for our process. So thank you for listening.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you. And again, I'm not very comfortable with this kind of process. I think I've heard enough tonight to be able to make a decision, but I would say to staff that I'm going to lean and err on the side of an anomaly and not a precedent, that we not have to be put in this kind of position as a commission to make these on a regular basis. I think it really sets a bad precedent. It sets a bad optic as well. So I'd like to make sure that we use this as a learning opportunity for us all, because this is a great opportunity in terms of a business development opportunity. But with things being presented to us at the spur of the moment, it just makes it very uncomfortable. I just want that to be appreciated in this conversation.
Commissioner, if I might, just for a moment, we're in a rock and a hard place, because you all, not necessarily you all, but the commission in days past adopted a code, and we're trying to enforce that code, and that's our job. And when people say no, it puts us in a hard position, and the Planning Commission is the first arbiter, and they said, well, we think you're going to work it out. And then it came here, and this is an unusual position with this applicant, where they wanted more certainty than most do in the process, that it would be worked out and fully baked before they moved on in the process. This is very atypical, so I don't think we'll see this regularly.
I think the bottom line is the fact that you said that these are things that we can work out means a lot, Mr. Richardson, and we trust in your expertise in this process. Thank you.
Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you. My question is of Mr. Richardson. Mr. Richardson, we're all members of the Planning and Zoning thoroughly informed about any potential changes that may be coming forward.
Mr. Edwards and Mr. Peterson, Mr. Napper, I believe, went through the changes they were requesting very thoroughly at the meeting. They went through point by point, similar to what they did tonight, but likely, I think it's fair to say, in more detail at Planning Commission. And so they were informed and aware of that. They had our staff report with the code requirements and our recommendation, and they had the counterpoint by point from the developer of what the developer was and the applicant were requesting.
So, committee members, it sounds like the commission did its work and made this recommendation. So I appreciate that, Mr. Richardson. Thank you.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
I want Menards to come, but I'm voting no, just for clarity here.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 9-1. That motion carries.
Thank you. That takes us to the next set-aside item, which I believe is B, I'm sorry?
B1.
B1.
B2, sorry. B2.
B2, thank you, B2. So I ask staff to make some opening remarks.
Mr. Mayor, members of the commission, in this case, communication was spotty between staff and the applicant following their application. We did not have responses to the staff comments or evidence of the neighborhood meeting at the planning commission meeting, and the applicant did not attend the planning commission meeting, although they were provided notice of such meeting. And we would recommend at this point that this it probably needs to be, if the applicant's interested in pursuing this, it needs to be sent back to the planning commission so the planning commission can hear the full evidence.
Motion to return to planning commission. Second.
We have to do a public hearing. Thank you. Yeah. So I'd like to open the public hearing, ask if there's anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this petition. Only if you're speaking in favor of the petition. Oh, I'm sorry. The applicant should speak first. Please state your name and address.
Diego Toto, live in Overland Park.
Could you bring your microphone down? Yeah.
Diego Toto.
And your address?
Business address?
And your place of residency?
Oh, it's Overland Park, Kansas.
And you're at, okay.
72, I just moved, 7924 Carter Drive, Overland Park, Kansas.
Thank you.
Well, like he said, it was a misunderstanding, miscommunication, mostly on my side for not having the neighborhood meeting, which we did now. That's all I got to say.
Okay.
Can I make my motion now?
Does anyone else would like to, are you through? Are you done? Okay. Anyone else like to speak in support?
Yes.
Would anyone like to speak in opposition to this?
It's your district.
If there are no further comments or questions from the public?
If you were to return it back, the date would be March 12th for planning commission to return it.
Okay. Close the public hearing. Do any members of the commission have any questions or comments? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to send it back to planning and zoning commission.
I have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Roll call by Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane. Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Burrows.
Burrows.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Thank you. It's Rob.
Thank you.
He understands. Goes back to planning and zoning on March 12th. Thank you. That takes us to our third set of, Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to try to speak loudly. There's something wrong with this mic. This is a proposed ordinance to define, I guess, what a mobile market is. This is fine. And where the stipulations for how it would operate and where it would go.
Commissioner Townsend, if I may, I should have waited. We are item E1 on the set aside. If Commissioner would like to take it home, thank you. I just need to make clear everyone knew we were on item E1.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, as I said, this mobile market proposed amendment would clarify definitions of what a mobile market is and where and how it can operate. I think it's a good idea, concept. I just need some clarifications and have some concerns about the details, and as we know, the devil's in the details. So regarding the section of the amendment 27-340 definitions, says mobile market means the selling of food products, including but not limited to fresh produce and dry goods, out of a bus, truck, trailer, or other mobile unit. So my first question is, what are we anticipating with regard to a trailer? Now, I have in mind 20-foot, 35-foot trailers, 40-plus that you see over the road. Is that one of the things contemplated here in the plain language of it? It could be, but that wouldn't be good for a residential neighborhood.
Yeah, an over-the-road trailer would be contemplated in that. The things that we've seen are more of a trailer you would pull with a pickup truck and not a semi-trailer. But you're correct that that trailer would be a pretty broad interpretation.
Okay, I have a concern with that, obviously. With regard then to the sections that deal primarily with the residential areas, sections 27-609, 27-610, and to the extent it may apply to traditional neighborhoods, maybe 27-614, but I'll concentrate primarily on the language in 27-609. The first thing that caught my attention with 27-609 in A1 talks about vending operation, the mobile marketing, takes place in a designated parking lot with sufficient space to accommodate the operation and not reducing the required parking for the permanent tenant at that location. What and who designates these parking lots? Are there locations in mind already?
Commissioner, this was brought forward to us from the folks that do the mobile vending, and last year they tried this at a couple of locations with special use permits, and it was really not tenable for staff or them to figure out every location in advance and do a special use permit and go through that process. And so they suggested these changes. They're not all exactly as they were submitted to us and with their request, but we don't know what locations they are going to pick, and so we tried to craft stipulations and requirements in the ordinance that would make it work in any location that they pick. So we tried to think of the potential downsides of this and what were those downsides and create criteria which would allow them to operate throughout the city without having to have a special use permit or go through particular review on each particular one.
Well, I have a concern with not knowing what these designated parking lots are, where they would be. How can someone in the neighborhood challenge this? I mean, if this were still a special use permit process, a resident would have the right to challenge that. But if we're going this route with the ordinance, I'm not sure they even have that right. So that gives me pause that we don't know what these designated parking lots are, who would designate them, and if someone wanted to challenge them, a process for that. The second thing I wanted to draw attention to is the distance that we're saying these mobile entities would be parked from a single-family home in a residential neighborhood. Currently, the language calls for 100 feet. Now, there may be some out there who are kind of visual like I am, so I ask that staff identify wall to wall what's the distance in here for a visual. Thank you, Mr. Cross. And it turns out to be 76 feet, 9 inches. So let's just call it wall to wall here, 76 feet, and add another, 24 feet, maybe a third, one of these sections, and that's the distance from which one of these mobile markets could park to a residence. Now, the purpose of the mobile market obviously is to attract people, to, you know, give them a convenient method in sections of the city where a brick and mortar store is not readily available. However, let me proceed on to item 10. We're talking about a 7-day-a-week operation for essentially a commercial operation in a residential neighborhood. I don't know how many people would want to see that distance plus a little more 7 days a week. So I would recommend that that distance be increased because our homeowners are entitled to 24/7 the peaceful enjoyment of their own property. And again, when we think about the convenience we're trying to afford our citizens, you still have to consider you've got the truck in whatever size or configuration that might be, with people coming up maybe by car or on foot to do their shopping. I don't think that's going to be the most enjoyable situation for a homeowner that close. So I'd like to see days reduced, certainly not on a Sunday. And I said the distance increased between parking of the vehicle in whatever form that is and the distance from single-family homes. And let me say another thing. Because of the food deserts that we know are located in the predominantly eastern end, this is going to impact some districts more than others. And I don't care where you live in the city, you should be entitled to the quiet enjoyment of your property. Then the last, let's see, designated parking lot, hours of operation. Oh, another question I had about just the process for selling. Is it contemplated, or will we control by ordinance, or that's up to the individual mobile grocer, whether these are cash-only sales? Will state issues vouchers be accepted, or your MasterCard, Visa, American Express?
That's up to the sellers, but I think that they take all forms of currency for food.
Okay. This didn't address it. I was just asking. I would really like to see changes along the lines of the concerns I had brought forward, just hear from the other members of the commission on that point.
Any comments or questions? Yes, Commissioner Burrows.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm reading the definition of mobile market, and it says it's the selling of food products, including but not limited to fresh produce and dry goods, out of a bus, truck, trailer, or other mobile unit. And then I go back here in the ordinance and I see mobile market vending for healthy foods. Is there a reason why we don't have a definition of what is healthy foods, unless you're going to include it as under the mobile market definition? Then I would just call it a mobile market and not necessarily talk about the healthy foods. But I would say if we're going to use vending for healthy foods, we should have a definition of what classifies healthy foods.
Commissioner Kane.
I don't normally say something when another commissioner is talking about their area, but there are a lot of people that work 6 days a week, and they would want to get groceries on the 7th day. And I've been here for 12 years, and for 12 years we've asked for some sort of grocery down there, anything. And I don't want to have somebody say, I only want to limit you to 6 days, but you can make a profit on 7. And I'm telling you, I've had a lot of people talk. They don't care what it is, just bring it. And I don't want to limit somebody as they're trying to be an entrepreneur. They're trying to make it where it's no longer a food desert, where we say you can't do that on Sunday, because I was one of those guys that worked 6 days a week.
To Mr. Mayor, to Commissioner Burrows's point, the 4 healthy foods in section 609 and 610 should be stricken. That was just an error. We got part of them removed in that fashion, but we didn't get through we missed those 2.
I'd like to make a motion, we send this back for further consideration to incorporate comments.
I would second that.
Any discussion, comments on the motion to send this back for further review? Okay. Commissioner Bynum?
If we send it back, then we're sending it back to the standing committee that brought it forward to us. Planning Commission, because it also came to a standing committee, but that must have just been a courtesy.
So it came to standing committee for approval to move forward with an ordinance in this regard and that procedure, so that we make sure that the commission's aware of ordinance work that's going on. And then it went to the Planning Commission for consideration of the zoning ordinances required by state law, and then it comes to this body.
Commissioner Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess trying to get this to where we are right now has been, I'm not going to say a tedious process, but it's been a step-by-step process. All I care is that we don't have another dollar store model through a mobile market. I'm satisfied with the language. I haven't heard any opposition from my constituents about a mobile market. And so I'm just trying to, I do recognize the concern about the 100-foot distance, but I don't know that I want to push this back. I mean, we've been progressing this through. We talked about it in standing committee. I didn't see any opposition from standing committee or any of the members that were there when we brought this through, and so I would like to see this thing move forward myself.
Thank you. Commissioner Townsend.
Thank you again, Mayor. With regard to the standing committee, maybe they saw detail. I think as a courtesy, proponents of the mobile market also came to the economic development standing, but it was a concept. I agree with the concept, but I don't think because we may have a food desert, we need to enact basically legislation that's going to, and I can see this coming, be problematic in other areas. Plus, this has no sunset on the provision. We're just trying this for the first time. There's no way to appeal. I can imagine that I'm going to get some calls because someone has parked one of these mobile vans or whatever they are, and we've already heard the definition is very broad, 100 feet in front of them 7 days a week. Now, I am particularly troubled by the particular sections that I mentioned. So I can appreciate what Commissioner Kane is saying. If this were a commercial endeavor in a commercial area, yeah, we can go to the grocery store 7 days a week. But I don't think that's appropriate for mobile vans that can infiltrate into the neighborhoods. People have a right to peace and quiet in their homes 24/7, 7 days a week. We can live with some of this, but I would adhere to in those sections that I mentioned is not appropriate.
Commissioner Philbrook.
Well, I've kind of been involved with this for quite a while, the food desert thing and the mobile unit, because the community health group that's located right down council, thank you, sir. Community Health Council has been working hard with the Episcopal Church and some other community people to create what would be a very, very organized group to come forward to help with this issue. And I've talked to them, and if we can get somebody to build different types of standing buildings that will give us produce and that sort of thing up north and in the Northeast, then they'll just move to a different area that needs them. But right now, their whole focus is to produce healthy food for people that is easily accessible. So folks don't have to worry about older folks don't have to worry about trying to get on a bus, trying to get a ride to get their food. Right now, we're facing transportation crunches and trying to come up with more money to take care of that. And I think we need to take care of our community. And we can come back, if I understand. If we don't like something that we've passed, we can change it. We created this ordinance, we can tear it apart and fix it. That's all I have to say.
Commissioner Townsend.
I agree with what Commissioner Philbrook says, and instead of trying to put forward an ordinance that clearly has flaws, and from my perspective, in present language, let's fix it now. Let's not be in a hurry to create more problems where we already have one. We're aware of the food desert. And as I said before, this is going to impact certain districts more than others. So I would still recommend that we send this back to Planning and Zoning. I would be more than happy to help with specifics. Like I said, this is the first time we've dealt with specifics and tried to more narrowly tailor this. And it would be pretty easy, I think, with some of the things I've recommended, particularly with residential communities. I note that they are very generous with the distances for commercial retailers. I think at least as much consideration should be given to homeowners and residences.
Commissioner McKiernan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, my understanding is that a lot of this was, if not based on, at least reference to ordinances that have been successful in other communities. Is that correct?
That's correct. This was presented to us by the folks that worked on the mobile market that existed at some point last year. And when it went away, we were working on this last year, and then it went away, and I didn't understand why. And with all of our other work, I put this on the back burner. They came back and presented an ordinance that they thought would work for our community, that would allow them to provide food service to the community. And with a couple of minor changes from the staff, that's what we've presented to you tonight.
Well, and I certainly was one of the ones who was concerned about unintended consequences when this very first came to my attention. But because it appears to me that they have tried to take best practice from other communities, and with specific regard to the R1B section, item 7A1 says that that the operation will take place in a designated parking lot with sufficient space, and then 2 compounds that and says, and not within 100 feet of a single-family home. So this operation, as I look at it, doesn't concern me as much because it's going to take place in a parking lot where cars are parked at least some days during the week. So it does not concern me as much because of what it says in the first item, in a designated parking lot with sufficient space to accommodate the operation. And then all the other stipulations on top of this in terms of not blocking the sidewalk, enough stacking space, it's not a no parking zone, it doesn't infringe on other businesses, seem to actually make it even a little bit better. Also because the hours of operation do not exceed 7 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 8 p.m. on Friday and Saturday. I don't see this as a late night operation. I'm guessing that this is not a business model where you can make several $1 million because if there was, I mean, certainly there'd be trucks flying all over the city. So I'm guessing that the number of trucks here is not going to, and I definitely appreciate what Commissioner Townsend is saying. She does not want to have a consistent intrusion on a residential neighborhood, but I don't see as it's written that it's going to induce that. Thank you.
Commissioner Townsend.
Again, we are not clear here by definition of what may roll up in any location as a mobile trailer. You know, you might get something that looks like a Chevy Suburban, or you might get something that looks like an 18-wheeler. with regard to the designated parking lots, again, this does not say who designates or how you can challenge the designation. I'm not sure how this even allows for or addresses, say, a designated parking lot. Could it be a church? You know, I don't know. There are just too many unknowns here for me to support this as written. Like I said, I am with the concept, but with these particular sections, I could not support it and would be willing to help try to craft something with more specificity. Yeah.
So to be clear, this does require a public hearing. I'll open the public hearing. Is there anyone present who would like to speak in favor of this item? Thank you. Please give us your name and address.
See if I can get this right. My name is Matt Kleinman. I live in 906 Ward Avenue, Lawrence, Kansas. I'm a doctoral student at the University of Kansas, and I've been working on this mobile market project for 2 years, and thank you all for the discussion. I do appreciate the concerns you have, Commissioner Townsend, and I agree that there are some nuance to that. I don't think the distance, as was determined, I don't believe that came from our group. I do think that's a good point to have in consideration. I don't think it would necessarily impact our particular project, though certainly in a future scenario that could be an issue. I do believe, though, at least the way it's proposed into the question you had about locations. Churches, for example, are neighborhood, R1, residential zoned most often. Parking in a church would be a viable scenario, certainly in an area where a church was so close to a home that it could create a nuisance. I think that would be a question, but I don't believe it's something that would prevent us from working through that scenario. If it's something that the planning or the commission believes needs to be resolved, that's fair. I think we'll defer, but from our perspective, all of this makes sense, and we can find a way to work through that, but we'd love to be able to have it in place sooner, just so we're able to open when we're hoping to later this year. So in summary, it makes sense to bring up some of the concerns you have, and I appreciate the comments, but I do think we're not far off on the number of distance and some of the other concerns. I think the trailer one is apt. I also know that trailers for mobile markets wouldn't be feasible just based on that. The length of a super long trailer, you wouldn't be able to walk through it. The Rolling Grocer one had struggles with a 24-foot long trailer. The other point about 7 days a week, mobile markets wouldn't be parked at a location every single day, 24 hours. So the concern of having it in multiple separate days would be our goal, but again, it's a zoning ordinance, so it's not tailored to us alone. But thank you for the concern, so thanks.
Broderick Crawford, 824 State Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66101. Thank you again for even broaches the subject. As a resident in an area that is a food desert, I think it is imperative that we try to do something to provide fresh produce, healthy food in this area. Certainly, Commissioner Townsend, I understand some of the concerns, but as the gentleman who just spoke, I think those are some things that could be worked out. I think it's been too long that we have not had an opportunity for individuals in this area not to have access to fresh, healthy food. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in support? Seeing none, I'd ask anyone in opposition.
Good evening, Stephanie Kimbrough, 2919 Stewart Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66104. I'm very disappointed that my elected officials have decided to put a Band-Aid on a wound in the northeast section. Too long we've been neglected and underrepresented and underfunded. So to hand me something as superficial as a food truck instead of an actual economic investment in that area is very disappointing. Who's going to regulate to make sure that my safety or the safety of the people who are purchasing from this truck is going to be insured? Who's going to take the responsibility of the citizens in that area, which with the increased amount of people, debris, and public safety? Are we expecting our overtaxed police officers to continue helping us with that, with surveying and supervising? Who's going to take over the responsibility? And to overstate, use the gross overstatement of anything is acceptable is insulting to the taxpaying citizens of that area. No, I don't want anything. I want a sound economic plan that also, just like we would do at the Legends, just like what we would do at 78th Street, just like we've done on 47th Street, I deserve it too, right there on 29th and Stewart. Who's going to take care of the debris? Because remember, we're on a beautification project because we want our area to look just as fabulous as any other areas. I am disappointed immensely that to say, here is a token, here's the crumbs off the table, instead of a purposeful economic plan to help the Northeast section, when we have a plan and we sat there for several months talking about what we wanted in our area and how we want to revitalize our area, is disappointing and disheartening. What happened to the healthy campus that we were planning at Big 11 Lake? What happened to the economic revitalization that we spent months working on and we came to every
You have 1
meeting?
minute, ma'am.
What happened here? What happened to the money? It is disappointing that you are okay with saying it's okay just to hand you anything instead of saying, let's work together. Thank you.
Thank you. We have a motion to return this to Planning Department and a second.
That would need to go to April 9th because we need time to work that. We couldn't get that done, I don't think, before the 12th.
Okay. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
No.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 9-1. That motion carries.
Thank you. That concludes the planning and zoning portion of tonight's meeting. We'll now move to the regular portion of our agenda. Does any member of the commission or anyone in attendance tonight wish to set aside any item on the regular consent agenda? If an item is not set aside, all items on the consent agenda will be voted on by one vote.
Move for approval.
Second?
There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia. Aye. Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows. Burrows, your vote is 10-0.
Sorry.
Motion carries.
Okay. Next is our first public hearing to receive citizen comments on the proposed 2019 Unified Government Budget and the 2018 Community Development One-Year Action Plan. Mr. Bach?
Thank you, Mayor. As we've done over the last couple of years, we've begun our public budget process several months in advance of, you can advance it. All right. We've done it several months in advance of when we present our budget in July, and that's done so we can come together in front of the public, get input well in advance of the time that we have to go and start formulating how we will make everything balance at that time. Just to note that, we started this process actually in the fall, and that's when we start moving through many of our capital projects, presenting those to the governing body as we go through and we have detailed discussion about what's going on in, it's advancing on its own.
You know something we don't know.
What's going on in 2018, and then we look at the 2019 calendar and through that for the next 5 years and set our capital project. And as you see, this calendar sets out where we are with the presentation today, and then we'll move through and have our retreat next week, where we get into a lot of details. We can discuss some of the input that's brought forward to us tonight. We'll finalize where we are with our capital in May, and I will present the budget to you in July for a recommendation, and you'll be able to go through at that point with your final workshops until we go to a recommendation in August. Tonight I'm going to have a presentation on two parts of the budget. One is regarding our general budget as we have for our overall operations, and the other is regarding community development. At this time, I'd like to recognize Reginald Lindsay, our budget director, who will just briefly run through what we have as far as terms of dollars in the areas that we spend our money in currently. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Doug. Last summer, our governing body approved a $357 million budget that was balanced on both the expenditure and the revenue side. Currently on the screen, we have the revenue budget, and the largest portion of the revenue budget is the property tax, which is followed closely by charges for services and other taxes. On the expenditure side, we also had a $357 million budget. 39% of that budget is for public safety, and 22% of it is for public works. The city general, which is one of the funds within the $357 million budget, we have 31 funds in there, and this is one of the funds. It is a $154 million budget, and 55% of it funds public safety, 12% of it funds public works. Also part of the general fund, we have a county general fund, which also funds services in Edwardsville and Bonner Springs. Public safety is 55% of this budget also. And also we have administration, which consists of departments such as finance, which has a big portion of the county general fund, which is the Treasury Department. And then also we have legal department, which is part of administration. And then also we have public works and judicial services. Judicial service consists of community corrections, district courts, and district attorney. So we have 29 other funds out of the 31 funds that consist of the $357 million budget. Those 29 other funds tally $137 million. Those funds consist of water pollution. Also, we have EMS in that fund, which is Emergency Medical Service Fund. And then we also have the dedicated sales tax, which is also in that fund. Also available for citizens or community stakeholders who weren't able to make the public hearing here tonight, we have a form out on our website where citizens can download and fill out the form and submit it back to us via email. Also, the form is available in the budget office, and it would need to be returned to the budget office by Thursday, March 29th. Now I'm going to turn it over to Wilbur Miller, our Community Development Director.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, County Administrator, and visitors. The Unified Government receives an annual allocation of entitlement funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, or HUD, for the following programs: Community Development Block Grant, Home Investment Partnership, and the Emergency Solutions Grant Program. HUD provides these resources for the purpose of meeting the needs of low to moderate income citizens. We are waiting for our annual allocation notification from HUD and do not know at this time if there will be a reduction or increase of funds. The estimated fiscal year 2018-19 allocations are based on the previous year's allocations, or $2,020,849 for CDBG, $593,000 for home, and $181,000 for ESG. The following pie chart shows this sources of support reflecting our allocations along with some program income for a grand total of $2,824,950. As you can see, the approved expenditures for those funds include the following activities: community development housing programs, the neighborhood revitalization strategy area infrastructure, administration, public services, Section 108 payment, and the emergency shelter grant and home programs. Please note that no CDBG funds will be set aside for demolition activities. Finally, the line graph, as shown here, reflects the changes to HUD allocations for the last 10 years. And as you can see, we actually got a little bit of an increase, but it's been staying fairly even. In order to receive these funds, we are required to submit an annual action plan Examples of other eligible CDBG activities include demolition, public services, public facility improvements, economic development, and rehabilitation of housing. Examples of home activities include down payment assistance and construction or rehabilitation of affordable housing, and examples of ESG activities include rapid rehousing and homeless prevention. This evening, we are fulfilling the HUD requirement to obtain comments from citizens and other stakeholders prior to developing the budget and the draft annual action plan. We are seeking to assure citizens that they participate and understand that the proposed annual action plan will address housing and community development needs, the development of proposed activities, and review of program performance. The draft annual action plan will be published in June to meet the 30-day citizen comment period. A second public hearing is scheduled for July in conjunction with the Board of Commission meeting prior to the adoption of the Unified Government Budget. The final annual action plan must be submitted to HUD no later than August 15th. Failure to do so will automatically result in a loss of CDBG funds. This concludes my portion of the presentation.
And Mayor, with that, I'd recommend you hold the public hearing regarding the budget and CDBG.
Thank you. We'll now open the public hearing. Before we take public comments, I'll ask Ms. Cobbins to read the statement governing this public hearing.
We would like to welcome all present to this public meeting of the Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas, regarding the Unified Government 2019 proposed budgets and the Community Development Block Grant Fiscal Year 2018 budget. We appreciate the attendance of those people here this evening, and we recognize the importance of your views. We would, however, remind you that there are 12 individuals that have signed up to speak. Each person will be allowed 3 minutes to speak. Should you go to the 2-minute mark, I will announce that you have 1 minute remaining, and that will allow you time to wrap up your comments. As you come to the microphone, please state your name and city for the record. On deck means that you will be next to the podium. We would appreciate your efforts to be considerate to all during their comments. Carrie Ross to the podium. Merle Bland will be on deck.
Good evening. My name's Carrie Ross. I live in Kansas City, Kansas, and my mailing address is P.O. Box 13047, Edwardsville, Kansas 66111. I'm not sure if I'm in the right forum to discuss what I brought. I might have misunderstood because I'm not very versed in this, but I came to talk about the budget because I thought this would be an opportunity for us to present what we would like for you to spend the budget on. Am I in the right place? I was a little confused when she read the statement, so I don't want to take up your time if I'm not in the right place. Okay. I'm here as a resident of Kansas City, Kansas, a certified volunteer from the 4-H, Kansas 4-H program, and a member of the 4-H Horse Advisory Board. I've lived in this county for more than 50 years. I'm well aware and familiar with Wyandotte County. My family has been involved in the 4-H program since the 1960s. My children are 4th generation 4-H alum, and we are still actively involved because we see firsthand the successes that 4-H brings to our youth. It nurtures, encourages, teaches, and develops productive and healthy kids. What better way to get them off the couch and put down their electronics to get some physical exercise? Studies like the report from the Frost Valley YMCA in New York shows that horseback riding provides a lot of healthy benefits. The study states that horseback riding can improve physical and emotional health. It can also help and benefit children and adults with disabilities and other therapeutic needs. It improves their overall well-being and quality of life. It molds kind adults, the ones that know how to give back to their community and treat others with respect. Parliamentary procedure is also a big part of 4-H, and this enables our youth to go on in the workforce knowing how to run meetings, work as a team, and how to civically be engaged like we are tonight. In this county, when the fairgrounds was located at 98th and State...
You have 1 minute, ma'am.
Oh, God. When I practiced at home, but I'm not going very fast. Where Schlitterbahn is now, the 4-H program is always allowed to utilize that fairgrounds. We had weekend horse shows, clinics, and almost every Sunday was open arena, permitting weather. The 4-Hers were allowed to use the fairgrounds even though the Fair Board and Extension have struggled to work together since the 90s. But nothing compares to the struggles we have now. The fairgrounds is not centrally located anymore and making it difficult for families east of the Turner Diagonal to get to the fairgrounds. It's a long ways away. In the spring of 2017, the Horse Project scheduled 20 dates to use the fairgrounds for 4-H activities. The 4-H only retained 2 of the scheduled dates, being bumped from all others, some non-paying, some rentals, for the entire year. The Extension Office communicated with the Fair Board in April of 2017 before the shooting range opened. The Fair Board then at that time had not opened the shooting range. They discussed that it was not in the best interest of risk management or positive youth development.
Your time is up, ma'am.
Ma'am, we can move to extend. Do you need a couple more minutes?
Yeah, I said it at home in 5 minutes. I mean, I practiced all day. But
Okay.
yes, I would really like to continue. And if not, I can have another member come up and finish.
Take your time. Just wait a minute. I have to make a motion. So hold up. Okay. All right. So I move that we provide her 3 more minutes.
All in favor?
Aye. Thank you.
Yes. So slow
Thank you
down.
very much.
It's
I'm kind
okay.
of nervous anyway. The Extension Office communicated with the Fair Board in April of 2017 before the shooting range opened that 4-H events at the same time that the shooting range was open would not be in the best interest for risk management, and it would not be positive youth development. The 4-H project then scheduled a benefit horse show in August of 2017 for October 8th of that year. Assured by the Fair Board there would be no shooting that day. Then the shooting range opened September 17th. The Fair Board then decided to have the shooting range open on October 8th, causing us to cancel the show and turn away our corporate sponsor. The Extension staff and I had a conference call with the chairman of the Fair Board, asking the Fair Board to honor the date without active shooting as promised. He said, I quote, "We were gonna let you guys have your show with no shooting, but one of your people sent a letter to the commissioners, so now we're not going to." My response was, "So you're retaliating against us?" And he said, "No, we just decided not to suspend the shooting because of the letter." Well, I hope the children of the program, or the 4-H program itself, is not retaliated against after tonight, because I have come before this board to voice my opinion. The proceeds of this show were to pay for the youth to attend a statewide educational competition, Panorama. This caused the project a financial hardship. Our youth only participated in 1 day of the event, but placed second in the state as a team for their equine knowledge. We had members on the first and third place Quiz Bowl teams. They placed in the top 15 for individual scores, and one placed 5th overall. What an accomplishment. They work hard in the classroom. They should be able to work just as hard with their animals. Who knows what our youth's potential could be if they had a facility they could access twice a week, including the weekends when the families are available. What I hope from this conversation is that the youth who participate in all 4-H projects have a home with an arena, somewhere for them to meet, spend time in a safe, welcoming, positive environment, somewhere to flourish and to continue to work hard towards the 4-H model to make the best better, especially the animal projects. We can't just sign up for a meeting room, unload our animals in the parking lot, and walk into the building. The Fair Board, after several planning meetings and negotiations with the Extension Office, has ruled that the only time the 4-H program as a whole and the Extension Office can use the fairgrounds for positive youth development without the shooting range being active is the first Saturday of each month from 8 to 2, 6 hours a month. That's the time for the whole 4-H program. This prevents the projects from hosting any kind of show or clinic. We cannot guarantee that the event would be complete at that time frame. It's not even a whole day. I also brought up to the chairman asking him, what do I do at 2 o'clock if the show isn't over? He said to give them their money back. And I said I wouldn't do that because that's not ethical. The Fair Board has clearly made their priority the shotgun range, not the youth of the community. I realize that the Fair Board needs to make money, and I am told at every Fair Board meeting that we, the Fair Board, need to make money. The Fair Board Foundation and Association, through the Fair Board Foundation, receive a lot of money from the unified government. I would hope that this money was given to the Fair Board, believing it would filter to the education of the youth through the 4-H program. But that's clearly not happening.
Yeah, 30 seconds.
Okay. I hope this doesn't go on deaf ears. Our 4-Hers in this community
deserve to pursue their passion just as the baseball, soccer players, and shotgun shooters. When you budget your funds to attend to go to the youth at the 4-H, please contact the Extension Office and speak to those who have the boots on the ground, who are really trying to get the experience to the kids. These wonderful kids in this county deserve a place to call home, somewhere where they're not set aside, somewhere where they're not pushed to the bottom of the list, somewhere where they can flourish and not be tarnished by the politics, egos, and personal agendas of the few holding all the cards and making the decisions. These children are the future, and they deserve the best that we can give them. And I came to speak to you tonight because I feel that silence is acceptance, and I'm not accepting it anymore.
Thank you. Next up.
Merle Blend to the podium. David Metz will be on deck. Meditz will be on deck.
Mayor Alvey, commissioners, staff, ladies and gentlemen. I am Merle Bland. I live at 8311 Garfield Avenue, Kansas City, Kansas, 66112. Thank you for the opportunity to address the commission. As in past years, I am here on behalf of Business West. This organization represents more than 80 members, mostly small businesses. Property taxes are a major consideration for most of these businesses. We would urge all units of government to hold the line when it comes to property taxes, and we're very much aware that the unified government is only one local taxing unit. Property taxes are a major consideration when it comes to residential development. Although last year saw an improvement in housing development numbers, Wyandotte County still lags when compared to other area counties. High taxes are to blame. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Sorry,
Dave Meditz to the podium.
David is gone. Next.
Daniel Harris to the podium. Don Gable will be on deck.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Daniel Harris. I live at 447 Shiley Avenue in Bonner Springs, Kansas. I come here on behalf of the 4-H program as well as Ms. Ross. I've been involved with the 4-H program for a couple of years now on the Horse Advisory Board. I've also recently moved over to the Executive Council of the K-State Research and Extension Office here in Wyandotte County. So we hear from the 4-H and as well as the Extension Office the issues with the Fair Board and everywhere else. What I'm asking this commission to do is when you do your budgetaries, let's set aside some money. If we give it to the Fair Association, put some type of checks and balances in place, not just the honor system, that this money is actually going to the kids of Wyandotte County. These places, I grew up playing sports here in Wyandotte County. I went to Sumner Academy. I played baseball, I played basketball. I did the fall programs out at 3 and 2, out at, you do the basketball, baseball, soccer. There's places all over the city for these people to go to practice. When it comes to the horse program, the 4-H program, dog project, anything that's in it, they don't have a home. We need a home. Granted, if we can work something out with Parks and Rec out somewhere, give us a few acres. I plan on filling out the budget grant here, maybe get a little money to put toward that, to put toward a horse arena, work with somebody with some land. Maybe we can work some Parks with Recs to have a home for these kids to go to. And that's what's most important. We need to not give up on these kids. And from what I've seen, these kids have been given up on. That's not how I grew up, and I know that's not how this county operates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Don Gable to the podium. Marcia Rupp on deck. Marcia Rupp, you will be to the podium. Dolores Lesting will be on deck.
Marcia Rupp, 2816 North 46th Street. Good evening, commissioners, and to our new commissioner and our new mayor. And the ones that fought so hard to get back their seat. I'm back on parallel again. I just went to the 5 o'clock meeting, and I heard that great raves about the street department and what a great job they've done, but as we know, their job is never done. and Parallel is still a problem. I mean, where the asphalt has moved and there's bumps all the way down. So I have a list here, gonna give it to Bridget, of the exact places, okay? And I know about money because I've been coming here for 25 years, so I know what you guys are going through. So all you have to do is grind those places down and put some asphalt. And Mike already knows about it because he already did a good job on the other side going west from east, okay? Now it's coming from west going east in the inside lane. So it's just one lane, and one of them goes all the way across by the filling station and 62nd Street. That is a big one. And I wonder why all the lights on the medial strip are down. Is that because somebody's drunk and they're hitting the bumps and the car's going out of control and knocking all the lights down, you know, the street lights? I don't know. I just want to say, throw in real quick, I want a new fire department out west. I want the fire department to get what they want. They are for our protection. I want the police department to get what they want because that is for our protection. There are 3 departments that are the most important departments. They're all important, but I mean life-saving departments, and that is police, fire, and sheriff. Okay, somebody's got to keep those people locked up. Also, I have talked to Melissa about SOAR.
You have 1 minute,
and we had a good conversation. And I asked her, I saw that the 2 departments that were still in demand, you know, to get things done, were the street department and code enforcement. And I mentioned to Melissa that maybe they could have meetings with a lot of the neighborhood watch leaders from each area to find out where their problems are at, you know, just kind of like the police department does, but more for the code enforcement and debris and stuff. And also, I'm trying to think here. Also, there was something else I was going to mention. I can't think of it. Must not have been that important. But anyway, please take care of Parallel. Oh, the other thing I did want to mention, and usually I don't get after you guys. I'm usually complimenting you all the time.
Your time is up,
But the one, I have to mention this. The one thing that you need to do is please do not pave a street and then turn around and tear it all up again to do work. Okay, and I know sometimes you have to do a little bit of work, but I'm talking about Leavenworth Road. It was just paved in 17, and now we're turning around and tearing it up and spending all that money, and I'll tell you, that is the worst thing, is throwing away taxpayers' dollars.
Thank you.
Wasting them. Thank you.
Tim, Dolores Lusting to the podium. Tim Kennard will be on deck. Tim Kennard will be at the podium, and then Lynn Kaluva will be on deck.
It's Tim Conrad. And Superintendent Conrad.
I take this opportunity just first of all to recognize members from the Piper Schools, Tim Conrad, and Board President Jeb Vader, members Lisa Sullivan, Teresa Facette, and Piper Optimist Representative Steve Buff. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. We have a couple of members that have left, so I appreciate the introduction as well. Appreciate the opportunity to speak before you tonight. Just a couple of things. As you're developing your budget and having your preliminary discussion on planning, the purpose of us being here this evening is just to give you maybe an insight, something to consider as you're developing a budget. And from the Piper, representing the Piper School District and over 2,400 students, and as you well know, Piper, a community of about 1,100 patrons, we have a growing need for space, green space, in our community for our youth. For example, we've got a youth soccer club that started 4 years ago with 9 teams, and they currently have 42 teams and soon to have in the upper 50s. Optimus has anywhere from 10 to 20 to 25 teams, depending on the sport, and that's continuing to grow. And I know there were some preliminary discussions back in the fall in exploring maybe the use or developing Wolcott area as maybe some green space. And as representing the school district, I'd like for you to consider the fact that the school district has 75 acres of property in Piper, of which with our recent bond issue that was passed a week ago tonight, we're going to be utilizing about 40 acres of that for a 3, 4, 5 building, and then hopefully it'll expand into a high school building. But my point is this: there is some land, there's some opportunity for you to consider perhaps joining in a shared partnership again with Piper, similar to the Kane Center partnership, similar to Eisenhower shared agreement that you have, and developing that land, some land that we have on our campus, and turning that in. Thank you. Turning that into some green space for practice fields, for soccer, for football playing fields, and then being a part of the development plan as we begin to do site development and budget work, that we could partner and lock arms together to help develop this area. And so I'd just like for you to consider that as you develop your budget and have further conversations, and we're certainly willing to partner with you and explore additional opportunities and conversations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Kaluva to the podium. Matt Kleinman will be on deck.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners, Mr. Bach. My name is Lynn Kaluva. I'm an owner of Rental City at 833 Minnesota Avenue, and I am currently the chairman of the advisory board for the Downtown Improvement District, or the SMID. Before talking about the budget, I want to introduce Jason Norberg. Jason Norberg is now our executive director for the Downtown Shareholders and the Downtown Improvement District. You all know Chuck Schlittler. He has retired, and we're all going to miss Chuck, but we're very glad to have Jason with us. Also, we have Tim Ryan, who works and lives in the downtown area, been a member of our board for a number of years, and we hope he'll be the next chairman. Regarding the 2019 budget, as you will see in the letter that we presented to you, the advisory board of the Downtown Improvement District, or the SMID, is recommending that you allocate $125,000 next year to pay for your portion of the district's costs in that year. I'll remind you that the unified government is a major property owner in the district. This building, courthouse, jail, Memorial Hall, the Reardon Center, the parking lot are all within our district. And our district provides clean and safe services throughout the district, including at your properties. What we do is assure that you and your employees, when they come and go, when residents come to your facilities, whether they're coming to register a vehicle at the courthouse, or coming to attend a meeting here, or coming to the mayor's holiday lighting, or when people from throughout the metro area come to an event at the Reardon Center, Memorial Hall, that they find downtown KCK to be a clean, safe, and pleasant place to come.
You have 1 minute, sir.
But that costs money, and when we formed the district, finances were different, and the property owners were told that the UG would pay $150,000 a year to cover their share of the expenses. Situations change. You haven't been able to do it. Things are a little better, and for next year we want the 125. Last year we also recommended 125, and in the end you approved 100,000 and directed staff to increase the mill levy on the private property owners such as myself to make up that $25,000. That really wasn't right. It's detrimental to our efforts to try and rebuild the downtown. We want the downtown businesses to succeed, thrive, want to attract more businesses, and increasing the tax load on them is counterproductive. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Matt Kleinman to the podium. Nadine Love will be on deck.
I think Mr. Kleinman is left.
Okay. Nadine Love is left. Did you say Nadine?
Sorry? I don't know if Nadine, Matt Kleinman is left.
Nadine Love. Eric Gentry. That's it. We have no one else.
Thank you. I'd like to thank each of you for coming out tonight to make comments during our public hearing process. We have 3 items now under the Standing Committee agenda. These items were presented to the Administration and Human Services Standing Committee this past Monday, receiving unanimous votes of approval to be fast-tracked to tonight's meeting. The first item is a grant from Healthcare Foundation of Greater Kansas City for Beat the Pack program.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters. Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Next, we have a grant opportunity to expand a regional bike share system into Kansas City, Kansas. Again, Commissioner Markley.
There was some confusion, I think, because we, as a standing committee, had to be difficult and create our own option out of the options staff presented. So I do have a sort of revised motion I want to read to make sure that staff has some clarity on what we're requesting. So, committee, please.
Yes, ma'am.
Step in if you think I'm misstating, but I'm making a motion to enter into a 5-year contract with Bike Walk KC to provide 3 kiosks with 60 bike racks and 30 bikes for the unified government used in its downtown, and 2 kiosks with 40 bike racks and 20 bikes for the University of Kansas Medical Center.
Second.
Oh, who's made the motion?
Angela.
Angela, and we have a second from Commissioner Philbrook. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
Aye.
Mugia. Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Item number 3 is a federal grant to construct new sidewalks. Again, Commissioner Markley or staff.
This is just a fast track item. It was approved by the standing committee, so I move to approve.
Second.
Second, roll call, please.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
Vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Now move to the administrator's agenda. Our last order of business is the administrator's agenda. Mr. Bach.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, I put 2 items as blue sheets onto the commission agenda tonight. They are both memorandums of agreement that we have negotiated with unions within the unified government that are both done in accordance with the direction of the commission. The first one is with our carpenters union, and I would recommend this for approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Second item.
Second item was with FOP4, the police union.
Second.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Roll call. Townsend.
Aye.
McKiernan.
Aye.
Mugia.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Kane.
Aye.
Markley.
Aye.
Walters.
Aye.
Philbrook.
Aye.
Bynum.
Aye.
Burrows.
Aye.
The vote is 10-0. That motion carries.
Thank you all for coming. We are adjourned.